Because traditionally, well, from what we've seen from these players, Ebby usually gets the better half of the matchup.
Yeah, and Paz has typically been, when I think back to when Paz has been, because of course he is an ex-champion as well, won in 2020 summer on V3. Heck, he used to be on DFM. Paz has been a veteran player in the LJL too. So many names in this finals have cropped up over time, but he hasn't been the solo carry. He has been the player which plays the role for the team that they need in team fights later on into the game. Whether that has been a Gangplank or an Ornn, or in this case, the Sejuani coming through in this current meta. And one thing that's already interesting me, Paz has already said, look, this lane pressure thing, I'm not about it this game. Doesn't even take the Ignite on the Sejuani. Goes for the Flash instead. So it's going to be less about that individual kill threat. And Sejuani does have that early on into the game. Base damage is very high. But that Flash will allow them to maybe disengage a little more. Maybe survive on an island a bit more on the top side.
And I think that makes a lot of sense because looking sort of lane by lane, I think that Ebby into Paz is the one matchup where I think DFM... when Sengoku was sort of on a good day, still have a decisive advantage too. So I wouldn't be surprised if Steel wants to throw a little bit of early pressure towards that. So I think going into the Flash makes a lot of sense. That little bit of extra safety. We are seeing a late invade here from Sengoku trying to split the map.
This is something you can do with Karma having a very strong level 1, and also Trundle having a very good level 1 too. Now, Akali on the other side doesn't exactly exist as a champion at level 1, but the bot lane and the jungle are strong enough that Sengoku feel good enough to walk up. Little Lance and that Burst Fire traded over, though, does mean that some HP taken away from Sengoku's 2v2. Steel immediately responds on the other side. So you actually have... kind of what we'd expect from what we've seen from the Summoner spell from the Sejuani. What we know from these teams as well. DFM going, all right, top lane's our win condition. Sengoku saying, that's fine. We'll play through bot instead.
Yeah, and I like that we are seeing these two sort of meta AD carries come out. Obviously, I think a lot of people are kind of sick of Sivir and Zeri at this point, but they are the two strongest... I can understand why, but they are the two strongest AD carries in the meta right now, and these are two exceptional AD carry players. So giving sort of the best tools possible to pop off, I think is something that is going to be really exciting to see in this game 1.
Okay, so what we're seeing now is still hanging around that top side, taking away the Krugs as well. So it is going to be a 2-camp steal on both sides. You can see that once also stopped off for the Raptors before heading back into his own jungle. Now we're really going to have to see what's going to happen with the first big plays from these junglers, because you are going to have overextended lanes. You are going to have the ability to take resources on one side of the map. But one thing which I noticed about Sengoku, particularly coming out of their semifinals, was they really relied on once in the early game. Their plays don't come from Jet necessarily roaming, especially if he's not on the Talir. He will wait until the skirmishes a little bit. It's not really in the first few levels. And also, NT has been locked into lane as well. You can understand why. They play towards the 2v2, whereas on the side of DFM, they have had a bit more spread responsibility in that early game. So it is a bit like once against a more arrayed composition from DFM in terms of the members they bring to the fray. In this early game, where there are options, because the map is a little unorthodox, I want to see how they go through it.
I think it is going to be difficult because DFM have been characterized domestically and internationally as well as a team with a very, very strong early game that can sort of play this faster paced style that we don't really see from a lot of the teams within the LJL.
Yeah, and that's really worth putting into here, because I'm sure many people will be watching this back in terms of, okay, what's going to happen internationally? But it's worth really noting that when you look at the LJL as a region, when a team is good in the early game, that doesn't mean they're bad at the early game by any means, but the teams they're facing don't play through early. The way that we play in the LJL typically is around second Dragon, around that Herald, second Herald. That becomes very important. It's more about the objective setup. Heck, we don't even split the map that much. DFM are an outlier within a region that doesn't really do early game. And it's reasons like this. Harp getting out of lane, using the resources, and once is going to get caught.
Yeah, Glitter Lance to slow down the Trundle, turned into a Munchkin, is probably going to have to burn the Flash to get away. Still follows him over the wall. Triple Flash from DFM. They want this first blood badly, and Yaharong is going to claim it.
And they're going to get it, and it is DFM mobilizing multiple members on the map. No one else in the LJL does this, and once the early game powerhouse of Sengoku, one of the big playmakers of Sengoku, is knocked down early for first blood in the series.
Yeah, and first blood onto a victor of all champions who benefits not only from that gold so he can get towards his item spikes quicker, but that Hex Core passive, you get those bonus stacks for the kills in the early game, which means you get your ability upgrades quicker, which means that Akali is going to have an even worse time in the lane.
Yeah, so this is very simple stuff from supports as well. When both lanes are reset, you can understand that the support doesn't always need to go back and buy items. It's not really as important from them. So Harp just goes and uses the AD carry reset to go out onto the map. and gets that first kill. I'm getting word from production that apparently the other two founders are ready and available. Middlecots, thank you so much for filling in for the first couple of minutes. Wonderful to have you on the desk here today. But Sam, Lexi, how are you feeling? You been able to catch the game?
Yeah, what we've done is we've gone and talked to Riot Production. We've found Froggen. He was in our house.
Oh, the ham was in there. Yeah.
And we resolved it.
Anivia ults are just something special. No one, thankfully not in this game, but I mean, I'm okay with this. Steel getting caught out of position while he's looking for Dragon. And yeah, we've been able to catch most of this game. Thankfully, while you weren't able to see our lovely faces or hear us, Nymera, we were still able to hear you and your thoughts of you on this game right now. So we're in a fantastic state. And one thing I just want to say that so far that's just an interesting trend and something we highlighted on the desk and also you brought up, and I think maybe our point got in. Ebby currently doing very quietly okay in this top lane versus Sejuani. Obviously DFM injecting rather early into the first blood, but there's some things.
Yeah, I mean, it's not actually... Well, he hasn't even got a CS advantage just yet. He'll get a wave up right now, but considering that the map was split, it's been less about what's happened between the individual lanes. We're seeing similar advantages in top and bot, which is to say, not much at all. It was more about just seeing whether any of these rotations were going to be... caught out, I suppose. And we saw that once, of course, was at that point. First Dragon's gone over to Sengoku, which they did have that bot lane pressure for. If you don't get First Dragon as a Civic Armor, I don't know what to tell you. That lane hasn't worked out for you. So, Sengoku do end up claiming that one. Of course, since the recent patches, Dragons are much more powerful at this point. Extra 50% value than they were at the start of the season. And now I'm really interested in seeing what's going to happen with this Herald. Sengoku and DFM both love this Herald. And with the ultimates which Sengoku have to play in terms of the Sejuani ult, the Akali ult, Civic Armor being very strong early into the game, I think Sengoku should be looking for a fight around there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on the other side, though, but when the Death Run comes through and Cyclone's down, you do have a few tools of your own to maybe think about, but as it stands, Sengoku, as we were kind of chatting about in the green room, do love their Heralds, even if they are sometimes a more bot-side focused team. They made that work as once, has found his way into this top-side bush, but
I think he's there covering.
Taking the bait yet.
I think he's just there covering. Ebby, you can't gank a Mordekaiser like this. He has ult. All you're going to do is just blow that ultimate. He blows it now. It's a 1v2. Paz in trouble.
He is very much in trouble, taking it over. Obliterates, flashes back the other way, and will now be able to survive. Of course, this Sejuani, he's not gone towards the United States, has gone towards. Flash does throw down the ultimate, but Ebby just throws down his unbreakable and is fine.
And I mean, you can think there, oh, it's a fantastic opportunity. Ebby getting baited by Paz to run after the Sejuani that he's just ulted. Ebby's not going to fall for a bait like that. An idea from Sengoku to try and find an edge, but Ebby's too big brain. You can't bait him or outsmart him.
Oh, watch this. Jet actually has no Shroud now. Let's see if there's an ult coming through. Not quite. Spacing just away. You can see what Steel was looking for. DFM of last year were very, very mid-jungle focused when they had Arya and Steel. That was where they played through the most in a lot of ways. They just allow Steel and Arya, particularly at Worlds, to really just run off and do their own thing. It's been less of a hallmark of this current DFM, though Steel and Harp are, of course, known to turn up to that lane as well. Did for that first blood. And you can just see them testing Jet. Now, we are here at this Herald. As we said, Sengoku maybe have the ultimates to blow on this one, but they did use that Sejuani ult topside. That opens up options for DFM.
It does. Of course, the Mordekaiser ult as well did go down.
You can see that the Herald is continually being dropped by Sengoku. Health getting lower. Harp walking up, and there's a choke point, which is now very dangerous. Jet going in. Gets a lot of damage onto Harp. No Lulu ultimate. Doesn't have the level 6 for this fight, but they've managed to split the fight. Sengoku, they have one choke point to play around. DFM, Steel, the smite on the other side of the fight goes down to Vital, who picks up that kill on the Sivir. Whereas DFM, in their other clumped up unit, in the 4-man, don't manage to achieve anything. Sengoku, they away with the Herald, they walk away with the kill. DFM really struggling to capitalize on that Herald fight. We knew it might be a little bit awkward with the earlier spikes from the base damages of Sengoku. That does come true, and now DFM find themselves in a very difficult position. That was a fight they didn't really want to take. See how this setup came about, because I'm really interested in seeing how this fight did end up getting split. You can see that Ebby doesn't have the ult for this one. Steel is very separated from the team. Maybe emboldened by the fact that there isn't a Sejuani ult to close them down, but even with that, Jet does a lot of work here in just buying up cooldowns, buying up a lot of space on one side of the fight, and it's Steel who can't disengage after that point. Jet manages to flash over the wall using the superior mobility of that fight at that point, and you can see that the Civic Armor allows Sengoku to reposition a lot harder. DFM once the intro to that fight doesn't go well for them, ends up losing out on the longer fight. I believe we have Middlecott joining us back to once again cover for various internet difficulties on the broadcast. And now we have Sengoku striking back. Middlecott, did you catch that fight?
No, I wasn't. I was getting water, Alex, because I don't want to cast a series if my throat's this dry. Hopefully we can get Lexi and Sam back as soon as possible. But as it stands, yes, I'm wheeling my desk up. I'm a standing desk fan. Oh, lordy lord.
Lordy lord. Well, DFM, doing something that we know of them quite well. If you're going to characterize DFM across their various iterations, and one thing which I really want to get straight with you all out there, DFM have been a very different team over different years. They have the same logo, same organization. They are not the same team. But one thing they do is occasionally just overreach. They will just look at a fight, they go, we can take it. And then the team they're facing is actually good enough to punish them. And Sengoku have been one of those teams. In this year, they've contested them. They went 2-1 in the regular season in summer. And in this game, again, you can see that DFM, they rock up to Herald thinking maybe we can just outplay. And they don't have the tools to fight. So that's something to keep an eye on as the series goes further.
Yeah, and hey, look at that. Sengoku double dipping on the sort of early game objective priority. Not only getting that Herald, but getting both the early Drakes as well. So whilst they might currently be in a goal deficit, a lot of that is going to be recovered by that Herald charge fairly soon. So they found themselves coming out of this sort of early game in a pretty decent spot, I'd say.
Yeah, and I look at what DFM have, and they don't want to be in a deficit at around the 20-minute mark. I think at that part, that's where things get quite difficult, especially if there's a lot of gold on Jet. You can see that Jet already is threatening in a lot of these fights, and Yahrong has no vision around mid lane. Has a flash, probably going to have to use it.
Pillar of Filth used, and the view from the camera enough to force the DFM mid laner away. Still is ganking onto Vital in the bot lane. The spell shield not going to be pulled in time. Second kill of the game for DFM. This one on their AD carry.
And it's still landing a blow again. It is going to be Herald in the mid lane. Yahrong has to teleport back to this. But while it is a kill on bot side and a kill onto Vital, importantly denying a wave as well, it's gold onto Jet. Sengoku in the Juggernaut match were very much the Vital show because Jet had a quiet series. Now Jet is going to be turning up the amplifier's volume, putting it right up to 11. And with the golden pocket from the Herald, and of course some of the earlier fights too, you're going to have to be worried about that mid lane opportunity now from DFM.
And this is just what the Wukong can bring to you. These snap engages where you think you're safe on weak side on the Civic. You think you could step up and clear the wave. Well, news to you, mate. Monkey bonks you on the head and puts you into the grave. Now we're seeing a bit of a rotation here from NT coming towards the top side of the map, trying to impact the rest of this game.
Because I'm going to try draw along here, because you can see that as it starts right now, Yahrong is not safe in the mid lane. And yes, we can draw on this broadcast. Did that on the fly, not practice with it before, but we get to draw and see what's happening with this vision control. You can see that Harp has a sweeper ready, wanted to go towards that bot side jungle, but immediately Sengoku go, well, they've just reset as the support. Let's put multiple members into DFM's bot side jungle and get down those control wards. If this Victor can't safely push out and get to the plays, our Akali is going to be much more valuable at that point. This battle over bot side vision control will be very key in the next few minutes in terms of the way these teams want to set up around the next few fights.
Nomera, I've just read something that Kachka, another sort of LJL caster, has put in a caster. Apparently drawing mutes the caster. So
what you're saying is actually, it's not actually just drawing, it's doing like a weird version of Pictionary. But you're not
okay.
So I'm gonna. What I'll do is I'll bring up the drawing and I'll be like, yes. Guess. What am I guessing? You're like, Timmy's stuck down the well. No, it's not. It's actually about vision control in the bot side jungle and how you can see that Harp on that reset was trying to use their sweeper on that reset. Sengoku immediately respond and say, no, not going to be the case. Now, getting towards this 15-minute mark, plate's obviously gone. Need to start looking at these advantages and where these items are start coming in. So is that Ebby, even though he is in a strong matchup against Paz, Paz went towards that flash and has just been farming up. This hasn't been the Ebby show right now. Yuta Pawn making sure Vital is stuck on the turret.
The Zeri can have kill pressure onto the Sivir if they are left alone for long enough. And like what DFM are doing here, trying to dive in the bot lane, but Sengoku are responding to it. We're going to have a 5v5 on the bot side of the map at 15 minutes, or maybe not, as both top laners joining their teams, and both teams deciding that maybe
So,
engagement is
15-minute
not the
marks
best
hit.
idea.
Herald's alive. There's stuff happening around the map. And what do? We fight over bot lane and attempted dives. I really like what Sengoku do there. Actually, if DFM are too slow on that teleport, they don't realize the player's coming. They are very much stuck. And remember what we saw around that first Herald. That Severe Karma allowed Sengoku the extra mobility to punish in those team fights. And while the desk was talking about how DFM have been one of the best team fighting teams in the LJL, arguably the best, Sengoku are no slouches either, and when they have taken victories away from DFM, it's typically been in situations like this. Force DFM to come into you, force them to overplay their hand, and let DFM beat themselves. That has been the way that Sengoku have dealt with DFM in the past. Just let them dive into you and make the mistakes themselves. As it stands, though, both teams playing it slowly. It's coming down to a very early JRAM, tradition we have here in the LGL, where everyone goes, let's go kill minions in the mid lane, and nothing happens around the objectives right now.
Well, yeah, not quite yet. I think something that we did just see the sort of Japanese observers point out is Immortal Shieldbow here for Utapon, and Vital's just gone back to base to pick up the Kraken Slayer. This would be Hextech's sole point at 16 and a bit minutes for Sengoku if they can pick it up. But NT's being picked off at the start. Utapon diving over the wall takes a fair bit of punishment for his sins. Jet level 11, you need to watch out for the Akali.
Dude, he has a lot of magic pen too. Honestly, that second E hits onto him, and Utapon's in a big trouble. They've already blown his ghost. Utapon wanting to just lifesteal off the wave whilst also getting some priority. But Yarong has to go with him because Utapon wouldn't be safe. We have a front to back. There are no angles involved with this. Steel does have flash, does have ult, but watch what Paz is going to do.
You see how Sengoku just don't want to commit onto the Hextech Drake when they know that DFM still have those engage options available. This very much feels like game one. Nightmare, both teams sort of feeling each other out.
Very much so. And I think why DFM are not really wanting to play this too fast either is because of Jet on that flank. Yaharong playing blocker for now, but that means he's not at the fight. Dragon getting lower. Feels like Ebby's looking for something on the side.
It's time to reset, though. The HP going back up means that both teams will start to back away for the time being. But no, DFM going still with a huge Cyclone engage, and Utapon is able to assassinate his opposite number in the AD carry. A 1-for-1 so far, but DFM are the team that are charging forward in this engage. 2-for-2, as finally the Akali is able to get into the fight, and NT chasing down by Ebby in the Death Realm. Jet, though, causing chaos, forcing Yaharong to flash back as well. In the first real big skirmish of the game, DFM find the advantage.
And who are the key players in this? It's Jet and it's Ebby. You could see that Jet was looking at Mordekaiser and going, I don't want to get ulted by that. I really want to see what happens with this Mordekaiser going in through the front. Because my first instinct is you just ult the Akali so the rest of your team lives. But Ebby isn't in position to do that to Jet. Jet is looking at this fight and finds Harp over the wall, out of range of what's happening with Ebby with the Ghost on, who's running forward trying to kill the tanks. But that means that the Akali gets to run rampant. Both of these solo laners doing lots of work for their team, but I think this can show one of the potential weaknesses of DFM. Should DFM's composition, should Ebby not be in position to counter that Akali later on?
Yeah, and fun fact, Nightmare, despite that fight going on, no one was able to Hextech Drake, so we are going to potentially have a repeat of that last engagement. Sengoku have got this Drake a hell of a lot lower than before. It's still, with his namesake, takes away the Drake. And that's going to slow down Sengoku a lot in this game. No soul point to play towards yet.
That is a huge steal from the man who has his namesake on that label. Means you don't have the Hextech soul. Means that the game extends a little bit further. Maybe you get to a third item in your carries. Maybe you get to that point where the Victor and the Zeri, if they go unchecked, get to just explode some poor fools on the backline. Ebby now able to return to a side lane. His ult isn't up yet, though. Let's see what happens on this side lane.
Yeah, it means that the engage for Sengoku is a hell of a lot easier once with that kill, as the rest of DFM on this top side trading for the Herald.
Okay, so it is going to be the side lanes opened up, but if DFM can open up mid lane outer tower with this Herald, I think it still favors them. It's still gold onto Sengoku's top side, which means that maybe Ebby won't be able to run over the side lane as much. But while this is happening, NT's just
NT, yeah, no, you just can't walk there. 3 members of DFM, probably only needed one of them, to be honest. Yaharong with the Chaos Storm, and that frees up this top lane tower for DFM to march down and take out to try and secure their first structure of this game.
You can really see that both these teams are very willing to cross-map with each other. I think they understand where the power points are right now. And Jet actually in a bit of trouble right now, but he does a lot of damage.
Still not committing the Cyclone, acknowledging the mobility that the Akali does have, and that, Even if he does use that ultimate, might not even be able to take her out. I like how brisk this has been so far, Nightmare.
Yeah.
And so you see the goal totals coming up, and oh my. Look at Yarong in the mid lane at 1.6 thousand
That's
gold
ridiculous.
ahead of Jet.
And the thing is, that Victor is fairly easy to remove from the board should Jet find that right angle. So that's going to be a choice to see how Sengoku use their cooldowns. Now the Victor is the point where if you leave the Victor untouched, effectively the fight just ends. You do at least have the tools to deal with that. Sengoku, your job now is to allow these carries to, or rather not allow the DFM carries to have a clean fight. Going to go back into replay of what happened in this top side, because they just cross-mapped a bot at this point. Now, conventional wisdom goes, if you played on one side of the map, maybe don't play on the other side. NT kind of misses the memo on that one, though, and gets a bit turned around, flipped upside down by Yoharong, and Cowstorm leaves him in a bit of a lurch.
Not a fun place to be. As we're starting to see 2 items come into the inventory of multiple members of DFM. Yahrong, as we just highlighted, has now got that Leandries and the Shadow Flame as well, so this Victor is very, very scary to deal with. But Yutamon has also accelerated himself towards that Phantom Dance. Now, Zeri Zakari really comes online at that Infinity Edge point, but you definitely still can do things with a couple of items. Jet looking to turn around onto Yahrong, and once is here as well. That's a shutdown onto the DFM mid laner going in favor of Sengoku's jungler, but here it comes! Yutamon skating over the wall, chasing down the troll, who is on the wrong side of the rift. Nowhere to go for once, and Yutamon gets another kill.
Okay, but Akaliel is down, Smite is down. Sengoku have to keep around the Baron now. They shouldn't really be able to just keep that off the table, but as we can see there, Victor, lots of damage, yeah, but he's also a glass cannon at this point, especially into Jet. Jet finds all of his abilities, and as much as that first amount of burst damage does take Jet low, it doesn't take him out. It means that Jet can dance around with that mobility, keep out of the Chaos Storm, do damage like that. So, even though it's dangerous after once goes down and the Smite is off the table for Sengoku, they're not going to give up a game-changing Baron at this point. And this, Yutamon just about living with the Ghost.
Maybe not for long, though, as he's continuing to be chased down by Vital, and Paz Steel forced away as well. Low health bars, but crucially, still flash for Yutamon, still flash for Steel, and no On the Hunt available when Baron and Hextech Drake are going to be available objectives soon.
Yeah, but it does, you got to start looking at these flash cooldowns as well, because everything is up. That's the important thing, right? Because in the next fight, I feel like that could be the fight which really determines the game. You got a soul point to be divvied up onto Sengoku or a second Dragon of DFM, and of course the Baron. If you win one fight, the whole map falls through in your favor. As we can see, that the map is actually becoming quite open at this point. What Sengoku have actually ended up doing, I'm going to go quickly try and do the drawing thing again. You can just see how much many wards they've got just around here, right? That allows them to protect the mid lane turret and start pushing up through here. The dangerous thing is, if you get to the point where of course, when you get to the point where you get flanked from both sides of mid, having the bot lane outer turret helps them do that. Same thing for DFM. They have the top side outer turret to hold them in more safe positioning around this mid lane. So it is going to be this push and pull right now, just waiting for the first team to make a mistake. And it has really been a typical standoff between these two teams. It has typically been about teams making mistakes on the engage rather than finding the big pickoffs themselves. Both teams very willing and able to punish those mistakes. Now, actually, Sengoku not in position for the start of this Baron. Can DFM burst it down? Looks like they're going to be able to get it close.
It's looking like yes, but this is a teleport coming through from Jet. Sengoku, they want to contest this, but they are going to be late to the party. Manchuri speed up will do a little bit, but that's very overambitious, honestly.
It is, and also the other thing is that you stood there with Ebby playing blocker, saying, "All right, first person into the fight, you're out. You're gonna get put in the timeout zone, the realm of death," and that means that particularly the Smite's off the table. Steals are much harder to come by as Sengoku than it is for DFM, who have more ways into the pit and less ways to get shunted out of it. So even on dragons, base dragons have a lot of value nowadays too. 2 Hextech dragons, they will be giving you 7.5 attack speed and 7.5 ability haste as well. Lots to be tracked on that front. Extra combat stats, particularly for someone like this Zeri. Attack speed also becomes damage later on as well. It does scale into just straight attack damage, and of course the Victor loving that ability haste too. So relevant combat stats being picked up by DFM. Also hitting those almost 3 item spikes too, which we've talked about for the Zeri. death cap waiting in the wings for Yakarong too, but Sengoku also getting up to items on Vital, getting up there on Jet as well. They might have to use them in this fight, though, as Steel's pulled the trigger.
Yeah, this is a very long-range engage from the Wukong, as NT is going to be forced to flash away. Sengoku looking for a little bit of a re-engage there with the Glacial Prison thrown out, but not finding too much. And I love that little bit of play from Utapon there in the mid lane. Very, very subtle. No cleanse available, but it's setting just on the edge of engage range for Sengoku. That's really speaking to the experience that this guy has, even on the newer champions, like the Zeri, like the Zuma that goes around everywhere, still has those fundamental AD carry mechanics that are so good.
Might have found Yakarong again. Who's found who?
Well, 3 members of DFM have found Jet, but the question is, can they kill him? Goes into the Shroud, stays alive for a long time. Will get his way back towards his base.
Okay, so Chaos Storm down, that's the team fight tool down, but the flash away from Akali just removes the extra gap close distance, particularly with the ability to flash in for a Q, flash in for a guaranteed E pretty much if you go point blank with it. It's just removing agency from Jet, and particularly with Jet looking like he's having a stronger game compared to the Juggernaut match. We know that this guy as regular season MVP as well, the MVP of Summer 2022, from our broadcast anyway, as officially unofficial as it gets. If this guy has tools to impact a fight, he does use them well. Take away those tools, recipe for success for DFM. Still though, this is being played around these objectives. It's the LJL Classic. We do play around our objective times. It's less about those side lanes. These teams, they're more willing to play outside of that than others, but you can still see it is about those big 5v5s. DFM playing towards their comp, wanting to play that front to back, allow that Victor a strong platform to play against, and of course deny the Akali from having free reign in the more broken skirmishes.
And Alex, a player on a champion that we haven't really talked about too much this game, and I want to talk about them now because we could be talking about them a lot in a couple minutes' time, is Vital on the Sivir. Not really done too much yet, but is approaching that 3-item point on the Sivir, which, like the Zeri, is an absurd win condition for this character, and that ability to sort of hit backline at the same time as you're hitting frontline is very, very powerful.
True, and it's, you know, very similar to the archetype of the Zeri, right? And with the ability to speed up the rest of your team, has a team play aspect to it too. But Vital, absolutely have to mention this guy who has been the main carry for Sengoku throughout playoffs so far. This guy is utterly absurd when he gets rolling. And now we have reached late game. You know, the desk were mentioning in the pre-show as well that, you know, at some point, Utapon just comes online. Yeah, the same can be said of Vital. Both of these AD carries are very good at what they do. LJL is blessed with good AD carries. It's probably our strongest role in terms of the top performers within it. And Vital is one of the first and foremost of them, even though Utapon is the most historic, is the greatest of the AD carries. He's just a gamer, man. He's he was rank 1 on the Japanese Overwatch server when that released. There was a joke that he was going to be a Valorant pro at the same time as League of Legends. This guy just knows how to approach competitive gaming with a correct mindset. And
I've heard his cooking mama scores are just off the hook.
Wow, never run into him on like whatever the Nintendo like 3DS social media thing was. Oof, this guy, it's like a legend in the DS scene.
His Nintendo's APM really is something legendary. But
so
we are getting towards that point of the game now, Mero, where that next team fight can be so pivotal. And DFM, I think they are definitely the team in the advantage with this gold lead that they've built for themselves around about sort of 4,000, 5,000 damage gold.
Yeah.
Don't do maths on cast, but I still feel like Sengoku have got the tools available. They've got those 3 items on Paz now that if they get a advantageous start to a fight, they could get an advantageous end to it as well.
Yeah, I really feel like DFM, and this often comes out from them, and this is something we saw a little bit at MSI. When there's no obvious engaged plan, sometimes they overforce, and they're forcing here. Is it an over one, though?
Yeah, looks like an overforce with Steel is dead, and no one on Sengoku is. Teleports from both players once again coming through, and I think with the chunk onto Vital, I think that's enough for Sengoku to be forced back, but
the Hextech Dragon is live. You're going to have to now see a trade between sides of the map. You don't have a smite for DFM, so if you're playing around the objectives, you best hope that Sengoku aren't bringing once to the party. But DFM, they've already overforced. Now they have to get creative.
I think they're anticipating a sort of walk-in here from Sengoku, but that Q from NT may have just saved this game for them. Hold on once, still stepping up very, very far. As Paz will be able to solo out that Hextech Drake. So, despite the gold disadvantage they find themselves in, despite the fact that they weren't able to take the 2 previous Hextech Drakes, Sengoku now on Soul Point, and DFM responding with a start up on the Baron. And I don't know if Sengoku are aware of this.
Well, once he's in the area, he's high enough HP to contest this right now. Watch what's going to happen with these death rays. A single death ray could be able to lock someone out. I'm not... Screw it. We're flipping. We're flipping.
Flash is available. He can go in. He can go in. He doesn't pull the trigger. Paz Arctic assaulting away. I think that's just the power of the death ray. You can't go forward if Mordekaiser's in the pit.
Yeah, and Ebby obviously ends up using that. I'm actually not sure if he used it over the wall, but it is on cooldown. I actually didn't see how that worked. I just saw that there were a lot of people in the pit. I'm like, all right, let's go for it. But you're absolutely right, bringing out that Mordekaiser roll. Ebby has not been the force of nature, which potentially I would have wanted him to be in this game. In a anti-tank matchup, not taking over the 1v1, not been split pushing people to death, not being a crazy high damage source in the way that some Mordekaisers have been in the past. So Sengoku really putting DFM through the works in this first game. This is amongst the better case scenarios for the contenders to the throne. Sengoku, they have been a great kind of foil to DFM to kind of test their wits against, because DFM, they have been known, particularly at MSI. If you don't watch this broadcast that much, of course, you won't be able to carry on with so many of the stories, but if you watched MSI, actually, this happened quite a bit, right? Where it was Steel with the only engage option and just goes YOLO at some point in the game, and it's the wrong engage. Sometimes DFM can overforce, and a team like Sengoku just preys on that because they're patient. They have that discipline. They look at DFM and say, all right, go on then.
I think
See what you can do.
They also have the mechanical skill to back it up, right?
Yes.
Jet and Vital are incredible players, and when DFM make the sort of mistakes that DFM makes, there's not actually a lot of teams domestically that can punish them. I think that Rascal Jester sort of last spring split, this previous spring split, I think maybe a team that you could put in that conversation as well. But aside from that, it really has just been Sengoku in terms of this year, and now they find themselves in a position where they are down, but there are definitely ways that they can play this out.
There are, but you still have the last of this Baron buff and DFM at a 5,000 gold advantage. Thing is, though, we don't talk about that gold advantage much because it's about how you use it. We've seen how quickly these carries can get removed from the board by a well-placed Akali Shuriken. Tower is gone down, but those shurikens, the ricochets. The ricochets, the boomerang blades doing lots of work. DFM still being able to push in across the board, but they haven't broken the base. This isn't going to be a game-ending play from DFM. So Sengoku, from that larger play, they still have enough gold on their carries. They're getting up to forwards, 4 items onto their AD carry, 3 onto their mid laner, and they have themselves sold point. Actually, at this point, I'm wondering whether Sengoku are actually at a slight advantage, especially in the way that they want to play out this game. If it comes around to a dragon fight, you are really looking at Ebby to have a monster performance, lock out that smite. DFM, if they make one misstep, this game falls apart very, very quickly, actually. One person out of position, they die. And that's whether that's a Sejuani or an Akali in the right position, that's what you're looking for. It should be a good test for DFM to see whether they have the patience and have the hands to play out the rest of this game from the tenuous advantage they have currently.
And I'm so glad that we are getting such a close affair in this first game. I know that a lot of the predictions were sort of quite heavily DFM favored. I'm not sure if anyone actually predicted Sengoku to win. And whilst
I think
a lot
some people
of those
live in their hearts, if not in the predictions.
Yeah, and I think whilst a lot of those are sort of like 3-1s, 3-0s, you want close 3-1s. You want close 3-0s if you are going to be having those. And I think this could be an upset in game 1, or it could be DFM using the goalie that they've got.
Hear me out. I wouldn't call it a massive upset if Sengoku won. And this is because, I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here, because for so long, many people have known, and particularly in the international community that just watch the international events, you only see DFMs who assume that DFM is the only team within the LJL. That is frankly untrue. This team, in this year particularly, have been pushed by Sengoku, the team you see in the finals, by Rascal Jester back in spring. Hey, even the Hawks this year really stood up to the plate. I am comfortable in saying that the LJL is the most contested it has ever been, and it's the highest level across the board if it has ever been. Now, does that mean that the best team coming out this region will be as a higher level as DFM 2021? That's a different question. But in terms of the contest between the top 2 teams we see today, Sengoku have done this consistently, punished DFM's mistakes, pushed them. And if you are calling the LGL a one-team region, I'm going to have to disagree with you, because we get games like this on the regular.
Yeah, I mean, CGF had a couple decent early games as well. But we do find ourselves in a very sort of intriguing part of this game with the Hextech Drake still available. We have already seen 3 taken, only 1 in favor of Sengoku. But DFM with the position in this river, it's going to be hard for Sengoku to go forward.
Yeah, Ebby doesn't have the flash, but has the ghost, remember. Quicker for that chase down, but doesn't have the most damage in kit. Lots of levels.
Not going to result into anything.
Yeah, and again, you can see that DFM lacking engage options right now. They really want Sengoku to engage into them, but they didn't have the early dragons. They didn't threaten the early soul. Jet on the flank this time, finding the angle, but he's been zoned out.
Yeah, the Drake going in favor of DFM, so Soul's a potential threat for them in 5 minutes. So much AoE damage onto Jet. Pops out of the shroud, but it's going to be exploded before he can kill anyone. And Ebby buying as much time as he wants in the front line. Now the rest of DFM are there. Now Yutapon can go forward, flash forward, but gets hit by the Glacial Prison. It's not going to matter for a time being, though, as that's 2 kills in favor of Vital. The Sengoku AD carry turning it around. Ebby about to get locked down as well as Steel fighting up against the Zero and does shut her down. Sengoku somehow still alive, still can't get away with the Hextech Gate, the Smite cancel. Somehow, Sengoku find the fight.
That fight was like a Shakespearean play, a tragedy, a comedy. I don't know what the hell it is, depending on your perspective, but Sengoku win the fight after a hard lost dragon. Start of that fight, Ebby uses the Realm of Death to hold back the entirety of the Sengoku team from coming to the rescue of Jet. Sengoku don't manage to pull off the engage themselves. And again, you can see that both teams are actually quite leery of going in towards the first engage. But Jet doesn't get the most damage done, doesn't get the most ability to impact this fight. But Vital has hit the extra damage points at this time. You can see that even though Akali's gone down, the second carry is online. All it takes is one overstep, an overstep from Yutapon that costs him the AD carry's life. Now, he does get a couple of autos out after this point, and Yaharong still managing to get a death ray across the team, but you can see the difference it makes having a late game AD carry present in these fights for most of it and not on the other side. It is crucial that Steel actually ends up getting that kill at the end. If you don't get that, you could be losing a lot of the map along with it.
And what do we say about DFM? Sometimes they just go a little bit too far forward. They saw the potential for a play to be made, but holy... I'm not sure if I'm allowed to swear on this now, Mera.
I got it for you. Holy
There we are. That is a lot of damage coming out from Vital.
It is, and you can see that he's almost doing enough damage to out-damage Yaharong and Yutapon put together. We do see he's got a Guardian Angel this time. However, another item which I'd like to point out is I'm going to quickly try and draw it again, because look at this item down here. We have ourselves a Mikhail's... it's not the Mikhail's Crucible anymore. I can't remember what it's actually called. The Mikhail's Blessing coming out from Harp. So if Yutapon goes forwards again, has himself a temporary cleanse, I suppose. One on item cooldown rather than a summon, a spell one. And we are back to the JRM. It is soul point for both teams. 3 Hextechs to the side of DFM. A mix for Sengoku with the first 2 being taken. Baron on the table. And you can see, again, both of these teams deadly afraid of trying to engage into each other. It's why it's slowed down. You can see what happens when these teams get into these messy fights. These fights go from good to bad very quickly. Neither team wants to be the one to make the mistake. They're looking for those openings which have not been easily given.
Game 1. By the way, we are going to be in for a treat if this is anything to go by. 2 minutes until Soul is available for both teams. Sengoku don't want none of that noise. They are starting up the Baron Jet on this flank, but I think DFM going to want to go hunting for the Akali. As soon as you spot her out, you reduce a lot of her effectiveness, and seeing that their mid laner is potentially being caught, Sengoku are going to start to peel away, and Yutapon is going forward.
Paz.
Glacial Prism from Paz onto Yaharong, but there's no real follow-up for it. And now Sengoku are being corralled away. Steel on a flank, the Cyclone onto 4, but DFM can't quite get in time. Jet falls down to Yutapon, and now the Zeri can fire out the damage. Vital dropping down into the GA, dropping into his grave. There was a little bit of hope for Sengoku, but DFM come out huge.
And it is Sengoku that make the first key mistake. They find themselves getting corralled, getting flanked by their own creation. They allow Steel a route into the backline as they're trying to figure out what the hell they're going to do with this DFM composition closing in on them. At the start of that fight, I honestly thought that Yutapon could have just fallen by the hands of Jet. Dashes into the Akali. That E connects. I think that could have been a very different story, but after that now, another Baron. It's going to overlap with this Hextech Dragon, the 7th dragon of the game without a soul being taken. And I really want you to look at how Yutapon forces this play, right? Lands the slow, but if that E hits onto Yutapon, I really wonder what happens. But Sengoku at this point, they're not willing to give up Jet. Jet sees something, bit of an angle, maybe could have ulted over Yutapon and into the distance, but doesn't choose to do so. Sengoku, they lose their mid laner very early on. Yutapon's at it again.
They might be losing their jungler and their top laner, but a very well-timed Glacial Prism from Paz disengages DFM as they are making their efforts, making their plays towards this Hextech Soul.
If he's in the right place to get a Realm of Death onto the right targets, but oh,
Yes!
Jet's just gone!
He's gone! He's disappeared, evaporated, eviscerated, disintegrated by Yaharong as the rest of Sengoku are falling as well. It was Jet and Vital dying in the previous team fight that put Sengoku in dire straits, and they fall down once again.
DFM don't care about the dragon. They see so many members dead. And one thing we know about Detonation FocusMe, you give them the opening and they rip you apart. Game 1 looking to be closed out by our reigning champions.
Yeah, the severe wave clear will not be available for Sengoku for the time being, but still pretty low on HP. Here's the major engaged source as Paz is going forward onto Ebby, who is taking him low. The first next tower falling down as the Mordekaiser who's being locked up, but the damage from Utapon is just too much at this point. Final Nexus tower falls down. The Nexus will drop in a 40-minute banger. DFM take game 1.
And for everything we know about Detonation FocusMe, we talk about this draft being okay, especially after the early levels. It's going to be about the Ebby diff, right? It's going to be how this Mordekaiser affects the game.